for those who don't know who you are, please tell us about yourself.
My name is Christine Selinger. My pronouns are she, her. I live in Treaty 7 territory in the city known as Calgary now, but my life's taken a very circuitous route to get to where I am now. I grew up in Saskatchewan, had a spinal cord injury in British Columbia, then moved to Ontario, moved to Toronto, then moved to the state of Maine for a year. For work, I work in the education sphere, specifically adult education. And so I work for Canadian Blood Services right now as an instructional designer, but I also do some consulting, particularly around disability inclusion and disability and accessibility in general.
Well, I think the reason why I reached out to you was because of how you're actually an athlete, right, with a spinal cord injury. So you're being too modest, Christine. You got to tell us about that, your athletic side.
It's one of those things that's also really weird to just drop into conversation with people. But yeah, for a number of years after I sustained my spinal cord injury and became a wheelchair user, I was a member of, I participated in a number of sports, but most notably, I was on the Canadian team for canoe and kayak, para canoe and kayak, right as it was sort of getting its start on the world stage. Really exciting time to be part of it. And I did win a couple of world championships in canoe and a few other international medals in kayak as well.
Was there a moment in your life that kind of changed, or take us back to a moment in life that like really changed for you?
I think for me, the big thing would be my spinal cord injury for sure, as it changed literally everything about my life. So to be clear, I'm very open about my injury, the cause of my injury, all this sorts of stuff. It's stuff I talk about very often. But in general, just as a note for your audience, it's not an okay question to ask people. So just like, I'm going to answer this, but anecdote, please don't ask random people this question.
Yes.
It's just like, just putting my educator hat on for a second there. But yeah, I was rappelling in British Columbia, just outside of Kamloops, British Columbia, with my sister, and fell. And realistically, I only fell probably around 12 feet. But because I was in the position of rappelling, where your feet are out in front of you, it just takes your body weight straight back. So I landed flat on my back. It was winter. It was December. It was December 18th. And so, frozen rock versus nice warm vertebrae, the vertebrae are going to lose that one. So I shattered my L1 vertebrae, which is, for those who don't know, it's about around your hips, or just above your hips, or your natural waist, sort of in there. At that level, knew right away that I was fairly certain of what had happened right away, because I could see my legs in front of me while I was laying on the ground, but I couldn't feel them. And there was an immense pain and pressure in my back. The paramedics that came to rescue me, which took a while, I was on the side of a mountain, so it took about 4 hours to get me off of it. They had to call in a volunteer rope rescue team to come get me. Of course, I'm very thankful for that volunteer team, but they all had to leave their day jobs to come rescue me. And they had to figure out how to get me out of there, because it was not a direct route. Mm-hmm. And they investigated a bunch of different ways and ended up sort of winching me up, lifting me, essentially all of them, with ropes. But they thought there was maybe just a spasm in my back that was causing it. First thing we learned when I got to the hospital, that it was not. It was I had shattered a vertebrae, and it had cut most of the way through my spinal cord. So I was 19 when that happened. So it's already, I think, a pretty rocky point in everyone's life. You're trying to figure out what it means to be an adult at 19, right? Or what you want your future to look like. And then all of a sudden it felt like all of that was thrown away for me, because I had to be somebody else, or like everything that I had pictured for my future was going to look differently. And that's a really difficult thing to face. For me, the conversation was, you're never going to walk again, was the immediate conversation with the doctor. Like, all right, cool. Thanks, dude. And also, because I'm stubborn in a way that I like to think is a positive attribute of my life, I thought, well, I'll show them. And so I worked very hard in rehabilitation and all sorts of things. And yeah, never walked again. Because turns out, despite what Hollywood tells you, it's not just effort. You can't just put effort in and fix those things. There are things that are just broken. And that's okay too. So, yeah. Yeah.
So then after you decided, your stubbornness, the effort, and this is now, your new lifestyle, like what were some of the things that you had to kind of overcome, right, in that new journey that you're on?
A lot, both overcoming and just learning to cope with. So for me, I think it's, I could go into all of the reasons why, but
Mhm.
immediately after, I was pretty convinced I needed to show people that I was okay, right? Like I was going to be fine. Whether that was true or not, I don't think I took time to actually digest for me. I don't know that I took the time to really grieve the life that I had lost at the time, because it ultimately was that. And I was very focused on moving forward. Again, I think being 19 influences that as well, and just trying to fit in as best as you can at the time. And so uh, I did what I think is probably a spectacular job of convincing people that I was fine, I could do anything. And I think that that has been to my detriment since.
Really?
So yeah, friends and family. Now I think, especially getting older, there's a lot of things I just can't do. And the thing is, that's perfectly fine. I am a
Yeah.
perfectly valuable and functional human being. I just have to sit down all the time. And there are things that are a lot more difficult for me to do, especially as overuse your arms and shoulders and things like that.
So
But
true.
yeah, so there's injuries that come and go, and there's things that I just can't do. And I think I have family who have just always been able to take for granted that I'd be able to find a way to do anything. So while that was true at the time, it is no longer. And there are a lot of things that now I end up having to navigate on my own because I set unreal expectations for myself, to be honest. But in talking about overcoming, like, most of what I had to do was sort of just cope and move forward. But for me, one of the most traumatic parts, or most sort of jarring moments, um, was looking in the mirror the first time sitting down.
Mhm.
So you spend a lot of time in a hospital. You don't see yourself, right? Like
No.
I was in the ER, and then I was in a step down unit, and I was in, all sorts of places where I was prone. At the time, it was late December, so a lot of people were on holidays. There was lots of issues with trying to get appropriate, or not appropriate care, but the kind of care you normally would get immediately after a spinal cord injury. Like, the physical therapist was out on holidays. Even realistically, I had two neurosurgeons do the surgery on my back, and one of them sort of walked out of the surgery suite and onto holidays. And if he hadn't been there for the whole surgery, they were going to have to move me from Kamloops, where I was, to Vancouver to have surgery. And at the time, I'd already waited 4 days. So my injury was on December 18th. My surgery was on December 22nd.
Hmm.
So it was already, like, longer than it realistically should have been, but you can't help emergencies. And I was in no danger of bleeding to death or dying. It was just that my spinal injury got worse as I lay there. So,
Okay.
due to, like, blood flow issues, like that. But so again, there was sort of limited people around. And so there wasn't a lot of time to, look in a mirror, or even, like, brush hair or do things like that. Those sort of not entirely necessary to survive things didn't happen because it was holidays. So it was one of my first days at physical rehab, which I did in Saskatchewan, back in Regina, that I was up in a wheelchair with a back brace on, that I got to see myself in a full length mirror. And the disconnect there between
Huh.
how I saw myself and what was reflected in the mirror were different things entirely.
Right.
And that, I think, was probably the most traumatic thing. The thing I had to sort of overcome the most was that my picture of myself no longer matched my reflection.
Okay.
And that was a mess.
Hmm. I can imagine.
An emotional mess.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and took a lot to sort of grow to accept myself as a disabled person, or a person with disability. Coping with the fact that you exist in a world that doesn't fit you, essentially,
Mm.
right? So, or isn't willing to accommodate. So even now, there are times where, we'll go out with friends, and they'll be like, oh, well, we want to go to, this new restaurant. And I'll look it up, and there's, two steps.
Oh,
Or, oh, we want to go to, this sporting event. Oh, well, there is only two wheelchair accessible spots at that sporting event, and they're both taken. Or, like it's this sort of thing of like constantly living in this world where you know that you're different and everything
Right.
seems to point out that you're different all of the time.
Right.
And navigating that. So it's an always challenge to accept it. But I've grown to love it for what it is. I know I'm different, and I think that
You need,
that's a good
yeah,
thing.
exactly.
So yeah, that works for me.
Oh, yeah, that's so good. So then, did this kind of move you into that educational component in terms of accessibility? It's, like you said, nothing's really built for you, and it should be built for everyone to experience.
It would be nice. um, this is the best way I have to put that, but yeah, it was that. It was a few things. When I first moved to Toronto with my uh, then boyfriend, now husband, he was doing his PhD at the University of Toronto. And I started working with Spinal Cord Injury Ontario. So I started going out to meet people with brand new spinal cord injuries, which for me, with somebody with a brand new injury, meeting other people in that sphere was like, there aren't words for how much of a difference that makes. Like,
Hmm.
it really is night and day to just be able to talk to people who live that life and understand in order to kind of cope with the anxieties of what that life is going to be, and in order to move forward in that, it's important to meet other people. And so I got the chance to be that person in Toronto, and I met a lot of people with new injuries or new diagnoses in like the week after they had their injury for a lot of times, which for me was just trying to help them see that there is just what life's going to be like, because people have questions, and
Hmm.
for those who don't live it, it's hard to know the answers. And they're often like the funniest questions you can imagine. And I remember this for myself. Like, I was really concerned with how I was going to be able to use the oven and bake. Like, why that was the thing that was on the top of my mind, I have no idea. I remember talking to one client who was really concerned about how they were going to vacuum. And so like we went over and like talked about it, and I demonstrated some things and some other ways that people do it. And like, it's, you fixate on something, and it's what stays there. So having someone to talk to be able to like navigate those anxieties and not feel silly for asking these questions, because they're what sort of takes over in your head,
Right.
is a really important thing. And so for me, it was also in those conversations with people realizing how little education was out there, and how many stereotypes and how bad the stigma is around disability, that even these people with new disabilities were like, oh well, like, Hollywood movies always say this, but like that's not how I feel. Like, am I doing it wrong? Sort of conversations. Like,
Mhm.
no, you're a human. We all, our emotions are honest and real, and live there regardless of what we do with them. um, but yeah, so that was part of the push as well. And then yeah, just existing in a world not built for you is its own thing.
So I guess then, in terms of like your identity shifting, you were almost like letting people know like it's going to be okay, like being that first point of contact, right? It's
Yeah.
just it's kind of, I don't want to say like a little like angel, but you're that angel being like, hey, everything's going to be okay. I mean, you're not, and you're gonna be with them on the journey, right? Like you're not, it's not all of a sudden like you're gonna like go away. Like everyone goes away. Like the doctors go away. Family thinks you're fine. Friends are like, unless you're saying something, they think you're right. They think you're
Yeah.
okay, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, but you need that individual or that person to reach out to, like that sense of community, right? To kind of get
Yeah.
through it.
And I
And
do want to like, I don't know that it was me. I think a lot of how this sort of thing is portrayed in TVs and movies is often that people are either very depressed or very angry after their
okay.
injuries. And I think for the most part, people that I was talking to, that wasn't how it was. It was for some people,
Mhm.
but for the most part, people were happy. And I think
Really?
that is alarming to a lot of people. But I think particularly if you go through either, a kind of very serious illness that would cause a spinal cord injury, or a very traumatic incident that causes a spinal cord injury, oftentimes you didn't think you were going to survive. And so the
True.
fact that you're still alive is enough to be like, yeah, I'm still alive. I'm okay. I can do this sitting down.
Very
So
true.
a lot of people I talk to, and like realistically, you don't have a choice. There is no like, you're here now. We can't rewind time. So this is what we've got. and you do the best you have with it. But having just someone to talk to. And I helped coordinate a program where we had a whole whackload of volunteers who were great, who would also, stay in contact with people after their injuries and help them through the many, navigating the many questions and concerns that you have, not just, like vacuuming and things like that, but,
Mhm.
ordering your first wheelchair. A wheelchair order form is having just ordered a new one, just got a new one. It is about 10 pages in like size 8 font. Like there are
Really?
a tremendous amount of customization on new chairs. And just being able to be like, what does this even mean to somebody is an important thing to do.
Huh. I
Let
never
alone
got
like how does any of this work? Like it's a whole other world. And so it's important to build some community there for sure.
Yes. I never thought about that. Oh my gosh.
There's logistical issues too.
Exactly. So then, like, how did you decide to return to like sport, right? After injury. How did
Good
that
question.
come up? Yeah, how did that come about?
It's a good question because I'm gonna have the answer I just did. I was seeking community. So I I wanted to get to know other people with spinal cord injuries, other people with disabilities in my community without just like just sitting at the mall waiting for them to wheel by. Right. Like I don't know how to do that. Like especially as adults and especially at a time before social media, there wasn't like a Facebook group for, people with spinal cord injuries or anything. And so I was seeking out other people with disabilities that I could talk to. And one of the best ways to do that at the time was through sport. And so I tried a lot. Every time someone would ask me to try something new, I'd say yes.
Okay.
And it was, for me, it was trying to get to know, you mentioned, finding identity and
Yes.
things like that. It was, helping myself to discover my own identity, what that was going to be as I move forward, and had this great opportunity slash challenge to reinvent myself. And realistically, life forces you into some of those sometimes. So
Mhm.
it was one I had. So I had a chance to sort of figure out who I was going to be moving forward through sport and through the people that I met through sport as well. But yeah, I was seeking out community and
Okay.
turned out to be not just local community, but international community as well, which was rewarding in its own absolutely incredible way. Getting to know, at the time, our team ended up fairly close with the Brazilian team. We were headed into the Brazilian Olympics right before this, the Rio Olympics
Mhm.
at the time. And so they had a pretty big contingent. And it was hilarious because none of us spoke any Portuguese. Almost none of them spoke English. And we'd be like in a small town in Poland where World Championships is, going out for dinner, speaking this mishmash of languages that none of us really understood, but sort of like charadesing our way through it and just having like the most joyful conversations about what accessibility is like. And like, I noticed you have different mobility aids than I do, or like, oh, what is that brand of whatever it is? And so having those conversations, and not just with the Brazilian team, that was just one example, but with people globally was enlightening to look at how accessibility is approached all across the world, and then how our sport at the time was evolving to have different equipment and aids and ways of kind of navigating canoe and kayak as disabled folks. So it was, it was in seeking community, and it was community I found, and was really, really welcoming. If there's anything the disabled community is, it's incredibly welcoming and just full of great people that just want to help.
So then, how did you turn, going from need a sense of community, I found sport, to like, oh, I'm going to take this to the next level now and actually compete internationally, right? Like, how did that decision all of a sudden happen, right? From like,
I just kept going and I got good at it. And then it was like, all right, I'll go meet some other people. I think that's just how it works. I don't really know. But no, our coaches, we went to national championships and they were like, hey, we're going to world championships next year. You're going to try out for the team? I was like, all right. And then like, it just, again, I just kept saying yes to things.
love
And
it.
I say that like it was simple. All of the athletes who compete are incredibly good at what they do. Again, it was a very fast trajectory for me. I started the sport in 2008. I won my first world championships in 2010.
Yeah.
So it was a like pedal to the metal sort of situation. And again, I was very much in a throw myself full, eyes closed, head first, can't lose sort of situation into things. But yeah, it was, on my first World Championships, they were still trying to figure out what the categorizations should be. So what
Interesting.
in disabled sport, often they categorize you by ability,
Mhm.
essentially, to try to make it as equitable as possible. It's not perfect. It is what it is. But they were trying to figure out what combinations to have for sports. So
Okay.
whether they should have two people in a canoe or kayak, or whether it should only be one person, and what the distance should be to race, and what the all sorts of stuff. My first World Championships was 2008 in Canada. It was on Lake Minnetonka. I was in a K2, just two-person kayak, with my
Mhm.
paddling partner at the time. His name was Chris. Great guy. He hated me for making him do this. I'm laughing because he was like, I don't want to do this, Christine. And I was like, we're going to try out for the national team. He was like, I don't want to do this. And I was like, no, we're going to do it. And so, because I was classified as a TA athlete at the time, so trunk and arms. So my legs don't have
Mhm.
function. And I had to be paired with somebody of the opposite gender who was an A athlete, so arms only. And Chris was a quadriplegic. And he was like, I don't even know how to swim. I don't want to do this. We tried out at the time again, so like things were chaotic. It was a brand new sport. We tried out via video that our coaches shot after we had fallen in the water probably 10 times because we couldn't get Chris into the boat. We eventually got a shot of us just like staying upright and going through the full race course. And so by the time we got to World Championships, we're like, our whole goal is to not tip the boat. We were like, I don't care where we place. Nothing else, just don't tip the boat because that's going to be embarrassing. And so we didn't. So we achieved our goal. We actually placed third, which is remarkable. But again, it was a brand new sport, and most countries didn't send teams. It was a very
Mhm.
difficult combination of people to have in a boat, given the restrictions they had on ability and gender for
Right.
it. So
Sometimes you never know where things lead you, right? And so this is kind of like you keep saying yes, doors are going to open and something, something good's going to happen because you're. I like how you didn't put so much pressure on yourself to do so much. It's like, I just want to compete. They're saying, let's keep going. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to bring people along with me. We just don't want to tip the boat, but if we do, whatever. But like, please don't. And then we placed.
yeah. Well, and my first World Championships in a solo boat, so in a canoe, I went to, it was in Poland, in Poznan, Poland, and I placed at national team trials in order to compete in the canoe. So went with the canoe, and the night before our races, I might be getting this off by a day, but either way, our coaches came to us and said, "Would you also race in a kayak? Would you also do the kayak race?" Because they knew I had kayak before as well.
Okay.
And they wanted it so that they could fill out a number of spots for the other athletes. So again, because you place by gender and ability, there ends up being very specific groups you have to fit in. So they wanted me to race in the TA K1. So K1 being one person canoe, TA being trunks and arms, women, to fill out the race, just so that there was a full, I think, like 2 complements of racing. And I was like, I guess that's fine. Yes. Realistically, I never should have said that. Like, I was so focused on canoe at the time. Like, why I hadn't even been in a kayak in months.
Right.
But I was like, okay, whatever. Like, and they were like, all you need to do, like, it's for the other athletes. All you need to do is you need to show up. You need to get in the start gate, and you need to start the race. Like, it doesn't even matter if you finish the race. Like, it's for the other athletes, right? And I was like, yeah, but I can't do that. I am very bad at just like not good enough.
Back.
I'm like I am like, and this is probably familiar with other high performance athletes. I can't just not try.
Yeah. Just
Um,
chill. Yes.
yeah, it's not a thing. I'm going to try. And so it was my again first solo race at a World Championships. Ended up being in a kayak, which was not the boat I had trained in. And so I just going, and I'm in my own head. I'm not paying any attention to other athletes, anything. It's my lane, my race. I got a silver medal in kayak.
Amazing.
I was like, this shouldn't be happening. Sorry, other athletes. Like, again, I don't mean that to sound like I'm bragging. It was just I was thrown off completely, and then I turned around and did the canoe race kind of right after that and placed first. And the whole time I was just full shock, like full shock mode. I was like, I don't know how any of this works. Even like, what am I doing here? And my coaches even were like, you're supposed to celebrate when you crossed the finish line first. And I was like, I didn't know what to do. I was like, why am I? That doesn't seem right. Like none of this seems correct. But again, there was nothing for us to even measure against going into it. So nobody had any notion of how they were going to measure up in the world because it was the first time they were doing it at a world championship.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it was alarming. Came the second year, and everyone's like, "Oh, are you going to get another gold? Are you going to get another gold?" And I was like, "I can't handle this pressure. Please stop talking to me." And then I set the world record again the next year. Again, didn't know what to do, but I knew that I had been yelled at for not celebrating, so I celebrated at the end of that one. So I would love to say that I went into it with all intentions of accomplishing what I accomplished, but if I'm honest, I didn't. I just went in with no expectations. And realistically, I think that that was a good way to do it because it takes all the stress off when you're like, I have no idea how this is going to do. See ya at the finish line.
When you're going through this time, or even now as you reflect, like what you think your sense of purpose is, or where you're going with, you know, with that part of your life?
Purpose feels like a very loaded question. I think purpose is something that changes as you get older, and it just changes because life changes, realistically. I originally went into education before my injury. I was going to be a high school math and English teacher. And at the time, I always thought I wanted to change the world for the better, leave the world a better place, sort of thing. I thought that the most effective way to do that would be to be a teacher. And I still think that they do change the world every day in what they do, because everyone, no matter how old they are, can tell you about their favorite teacher and their least favorite teacher. And so, like, realistically, that is a massive impact to have on the world. And you have hundreds of kids every year, right? So, like, that impact is just magnified. And people tell these stories to their kids, to their nieces and nephews, to other generations, right? That impact is constant. So that was kind of why I first went into teaching. My purpose was, leave the world a better place, which is super broad, right? Yeah. I wanted to teach people why English is awesome and why math is awesome. And I know that those two things don't usually go together, but I made it work. Then that just sort of narrowed as, life changes and situations change and things happen. So it became a lot more about educating adults, which is an underserved group in terms of looking at education. We tend to think like, you're 18, you're good, away you go. And not necessarily consider the ramifications of how that changes in your life. And then in particular, adults with disabilities, because everything changes. Like literally everything changes when you become disabled. And that is really overwhelming to think about in its totality. Like, so thinking about individual tasks like vacuuming is one thing, but thinking about the fact that like literally everything in my life changed post-injury. My friendships changed greatly. My the way in which I function, like things like how I get in and out of the car changed, and how I drive, how it just everything about how I interact with the world changed. And so it became really important to me that there is some place for adults with disabilities to seek that out as well. Mm-hmm. And then again, things sort of changed again. And so I'm still very passionate about that. It becomes a little bit more of a challenge to build a career on. Yes. And so then it evolved into, also talking to corporations and institutions and companies about what they can do to be more inclusive of disabled people in their practices, hiring practices, training practices, anything, and looking at, in general, how we make the world more accessible for everyone. So it's taken lots of circuitous routes. For a while, I became quite well known in the field of sex education, and particularly for adults and for adults with disabilities. Again, being something I was talking about this recently with a group that has hired me to talk at a conference, and I was saying, it's not something they were saying. It's not something adults are very comfortable talking about. I was like, it's not something people are very comfortable talking about. Like, it's not like you were more comfortable with sex ed when you were a kid. Let's be honest here. Like, this is just not a thing that people like talking about. And so finding a way to have respectful, inclusive discussions about it, because again, everything changes when you become disabled, and that can be really overwhelming, particularly in realms about conversations you don't necessarily want to be having. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it all it all kind of comes together. But in terms of purpose, it's, hopefully make the world a more accessible place. Where I planted on now, even if it's just helping a few people see the difference and teach them how to have productive advocacy conversations, to try to build towards that. So hopefully,
Oh, I love that.
making the world a more accessible place.
I think you are.
The best you can do is the best you can do, and just that's all you got.
Yeah.
This is my inspirational quote for the day. The best you can do is the best you can do.